Today is Thursday, August 12th, and welcome to the 8:30 show. I'm KJ, and every Thursday night you'll find me here at 8:30 p.m. on YouTube at Metro Conservative Media. Please subscribe to this channel. That way you are notified when we put out new content. That's on YouTube. Also, please give us a thumbs up. I'm also live on Facebook at Metro Conservative Media. So again, please like our page. We appreciate the support. This is a show where I chat with various individuals about their conservative journey. Tonight, I am switching things up a little bit. I want to have an open conversation with you all. So, in essence, you will be my guest tonight. And please, again, join the conversation by commenting throughout the show. What I want to talk about tonight is the state of youth in our community. We are at the time where a lot of parents are gearing up for back to school. And I want to talk about the educational experience that our youth will walk into, what they've had as far as last year and what they're going into this school year. They have a lot of issues to deal with. We have critical race theory. We have gender issues that they will be encountering. The COVID-19, and not only the lockdown experience of that, because some schools may not even open, but just dealing with masking and the pressures surrounding COVID-19. There may be some apprehension, some fear. What are those? How are they affecting our youth? And are the left-leaning solutions, because that's what we've been pretty much seeing as far as the government is concerned and within the educational sector, a lot of the solutions that have been brought forth are very progressive, are very supported by the left. And is that the answer? So again, that's what I'm talking about tonight, and I would love to get your feedback on all of those. Do you have children that are in school or are planning to go to school? What are your kids talking about? Have you had any encounters with critical race theory, or your children, have they had any encounters with critical race theory? What are those conversations about? Are you a supporter of that? How do they feel about the lockdowns and now going back to school? Do they want to mask, or are they against the masking? And how do you feel about that? So I want to kind of talk about all of that and explore that. So first, I want to talk about a little bit, because every show I would generally have a guest, and we really spend the first half of the show talking about their conservative journey. So tonight, I'm not going to spend the first half of the show talking about that, but I did want to give you guys a little insight on my conservative journey, because I can't remember if I have mentioned that before in the past. So, like many of the guests that I have on the show, I have not always been Republican. I have not always been conservative. Actually, for most of my life, I have been a registered Democrat. And actually a staunch Democrat. So I remember being in college and having very passionate conversations in my political science classes and my social studies classes with people, and just going hard against Republicans and conservatives and the right. So much so that even when in college, I started a petition to get Fox News out of hospitals. You know how when you go to the doctor's office or the hospital, they would generally have Fox News playing. And so, I was like, this isn't right. Fox News, they faux news, and they're liars and they're racist. And so I started a petition to kind of get them out of the hospitals. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of background from where my viewpoint was. And so one day, I think this was, I think Obama was in office. And I was watching TV. It was late at night, I think, and I was clicking through the channels, and I saw a program with Glenn Beck, and I was one of those ones. Oh, he's a racist, Glenn Beck, oh, he's on conservative. I think he may have been still on Fox News at the time, and I was like, what's this guy talking about? And he was actually talking about Black history. He was hosting a program, and it wasn't his show, it was just some special correspondence where he was talking about how Black history was not taught correctly in most schools. He was talking about how in most curriculums, Black history and people within Black history was made accomplishments and things like that in American history were not talked about enough. And he was going through this thorough review of Black history. And so I was like, what is he doing? And so I'm thinking, why is he doing that? This is racist trying to educate people about Black History Month. Well, it wasn't even month, it was just like Black history. So I watched it. It was a good program. So then that kind of was made me think. So I was just like, well, if he's doing that, maybe what I was thinking about him is not correct. So then I started researching him, and I started just Googling him and looking up some things about him. And I came across this show, the Glenn Beck Show. And I watched it one day, and it was really good. Like, he broke down the different issues, and he had a chalkboard, and he was writing on the chalkboard, and he really broke it down. And then I found out that he was a Christian, and he was a very strong Christian at the time, and he was talking about biblical principles and how they kind of correlate with Republicans and conservatives. And after that, I was like a very staunch supporter of his show. I watched all of his shows, and so then it just kind of started to unravel there, where I would just start to watch different conservative people. We start reading different conservative literature, Thomas Sowell, um, and other writers, and I said, you know what? I agree. This makes sense. Many of these people that I always thought were racist were not. They weren't saying anything racist. Actually, they were pushing against it. And so that is pretty much where my conservative journey began. And so here I am today with you all just talking about conservative politics and issues. So as I mentioned, I want to kind of hone in on a couple topics for our youth. So one thing, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with 1776 Unite. It's basically it's a Black-led alliance of writers, thinkers, and activists who basically are historians, and they want to put out the history, um, American history. And so it's led by Bob Woodson and several other people. And if you don't know about it, I suggest you check into it. But they put out recently something talking about how the Department of Education uh, has a proposed priority one. So they have projects that incorporate racially, ethnically, culturally, and linguistically diverse perspectives in teaching and learning. So basically, they've made suggestions for our children as far as what should be taught in public schools. So while it's well intended on the surface, because they have this new rule that would prioritize funding for curricula founded on misleading history and divisive ideology. So basically, they are prioritizing the classroom content and practices that, and then again, that's what this whole proposed priority does. It puts forth regulations that normalize or will result in a deepening contempt for our nation. So one of the things that they really support is the whole 1619 project, and basically this whole idea of America is plagued by the worst racial animosity in decades, and and they support like the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History, which I've been to. I'm not sure if you guys know, but they had this, I don't know what you would call it, this expose talking about what whiteness is, and giving it all these attributes, um, talking about basically this. It was just marred in sort of like this pseudo scholarship proclaiming universal values of objectivity, literacy, and self-reliance as aspects of whiteness. This was like a real thing. Um, so again, they're trying to push this idea, sort of like wrapped in critical race theory, but instilling this idea that we have oppressed people, we have people, which is generally they say the white people, and I'm sorry, minorities, and the oppressors are white people. So again, this is all geared around Ibram X. Kendi and his anti-racist ideas. Basically, he says something about any idea that suggests racial groups are equals and all their apparent differences is nothing right or wrong with any racial group. So anti-racist ideas argue that racist policies are the cause of racial inequities. So he basically ignores overwhelming evidence that many racial inequalities are not driven by racist policies, um, but more so of income disparities within racial groups. So I say all that to say this is like some of the stuff that will be what is going on with our children. And I'm not talking about just high school. I'm talking about from like elementary school on up. Again, they're talking about this critical race theory, which assumes that racism is permanent and affects every aspect of society, political, economic, social, and religious institutions. So it's a theory that further advances the belief that being born white in itself confers unearned privileges. Therefore, any societal attainment of colored blindness, remember we were supposed to be, content of your character, um, anything like that in which race or ethnicity does not hinder opportunities is impossible. So again, this whole critical race theory, I mean, I'm a black person, as you can see, and I don't agree with this. I don't want anyone telling my son or me, for that matter, that I am any lesser or I need to be looked down upon because of the color of my skin. And I certainly don't want them telling, a white person that they have this privilege and they are, walk through life with this they have to go about life because of this privilege, maybe trying to help people of color or just it's just stupid. And so it's basically a message where we're told that we're unfortunate enough to be born with black skin, so we're like second class citizens who pay who and whoever pay race penalty. So basically, under this rationale, affluent blacks rank below the poorest whites. If you think about it, we're asked to believe that more than 50 years of affirmative action programs and race consciousness have done nothing to change the trajectory of or opportunities of people born without white skin. So I say all that to say this is stuff that our children may encounter in school. What are your thoughts? I mean, if I were you, especially if I was white, I would be so upset. Uh, what are you telling your kids? What are you? How are you combating this narrative of privilege, of saying that you have privilege or you're better off just because of the color of your skin. And because of that privilege, you should actually feel bad. And so you should be doing things to help Black people. So just to give you an example, last year, the Office of Instruction for Westfield, New Jersey Public Schools approved a course on power, privilege, and imbalance in American society. Basically, the learning objectives of the semester along 2 credit course included analyze and evaluate how white supremacy has been established in American society and the ways it continues to impact the African American, Native American, Hispanic, Asian, anybody with who can go out in the sun and not burn, pretty much. Uh, so identify the concept of race and differentiate between the terms racism, prejudice, de jure and de facto segregation, institutional racism, personal racism. So basically, the syllabus explains that critical race theory is a theoretical concept that emerged from the civil rights movement. The goal is to give voice to groups who have suffered from systemic oppression. Again, this idea of systemic oppression, systemic racism, it's an idea. It is a theory, if you will. It is you can say that you may believe in this, but what makes it true? Prove it. And I haven't seen any proof. I have no problem with critical race theory being put in a class and put up against some other theory. And so people say, well, you debate this. But to say this as fact and to incorporate this in all of our children's curriculum, in jobs, on my job now, we have to do training on this, and they are pushing this as fact, as systemic racism, as talking about white privilege. Why aren't you in the streets screaming and hollering about this? It's ridiculous. So again, it says the goal is to give voice to groups who have suffered from systemic oppression and develop the theoretical and practical ways for students to deconstruct the power structure. So, I mean, this is what we have going on. This is what we have going on. Let me see here. I have some comments. Adam Rutter. I believe that no matter a student's child's race, they should be taught that learning a valuable skill, a good work ethic, and punctuality is 95% of success. The other 5% is networking and staying healthy. So do I. That's like old school practice, right? I mean, that's what I was taught. I'm not taught that just because someone is of a different race or skin color, they bear some type of burden. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Black history. I think it should. I'm a huge advocate of it being incorporated more so in American history curriculum, because personally, I had to take an African American history class in order to find out about American history. So, African Americans who have done so much for us in America, I had to take an African American history class for that. So people like Crispus Attucks, David Walker, Oluwade Aquino, all these people I learned about in African American history class, and they are embedded in American history. American history classes throughout K through 12, even college, unless you go to a HBCU, all they teach about is Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, who else? What's the woman who did the railroad? It just slipped my mind now. But these are the people they teach about often on, and you don't hear about. There's so many other people that we can hear about as far as African Americans that were born here and helped create this country. We should be learning about that, I think. But critical race theory? No, I don't think that's the way. Again, I think it can be put into an environment where our children are old enough to debate this, and come up with critical, uh, you know, support or pros and cons about this theory, but to have it as fact, to keep pushing the fallacy of the 1619 project, we are going down a road that is somewhere we're not going to get back from, and it's not right. So again, you guys, I want to hear from what you think. Parents on here or college students. What do you think about this? Are you in support of critical race theory? Do you believe that the United States, if you are a African American person, that you have some type of you're born with a mark on your chest, and really so white people owe you something, and for the rest of your life. And so, are you teaching your children this? Are you teaching your children, African American children, that when you go to school, they will be treated differently, or they will have um, less ability or ways to move ahead in school because of the color of their skin. Now, I know there's racism, there's discrimination, there is prejudice. We all know this. But is this something that is systemic, where everywhere we go, it permeates every part of our culture? I say no. We have here Giovanni Patterson. CRT is a philosophy woven into the way teachers teach and present material. It's not a real theory, which is why conservatives have a hard time debating it. The number one question they ask is, name one piece of CRT literature. True. Well, we have, one huge person in this is Ibram X. Kendi. He's been kind of the face and the voice for CRT. Also, the 1619 Project pushes this thinking. But I say, if they are saying that this is something that's systemically true, prove it. And the thing where this whole theory falls short is they base everything on outcomes. And just because something just because we have a certain outcome, and just because something is, it does not mean it's due to racism. Not every time. So I don't want to stay too much longer this. We could take this the whole 30 minutes or so, but this is something our children are dealing with to go back to school. I remember I was reading an article, I'll finish up on this, where in New York City, a private school, where they were telling a teacher told the white boys in class that someone in the class was going to be a serial killer, like because they were white. And I guess they based it off of statistics where we have, a lot of, and I don't have these numbers or data here, but it was basically saying she was saying that someone in the class was going to be a serial killer because they were white, and they and most serial killers are white. And this was like a middle school class, or maybe it was like 5th grade. It's just this whole putting everyone in boxes, not taking into consideration their upbringing, not taking into consideration their economic status, nothing. It's just because you are a certain skin color, you are bound to be this. It's wrong. So that's my thoughts on that. See, Giovanni Patterson also says Kendi is the anti-racism expert. CRT is not a product of his. CRT has been in effect for about 10 years now. Okay, well, thank you for that. So next I wanted to go into gender issues. So this is a new day and age. June was Pride Month. So we saw a marketing platform, a marketing push for Pride like I have never seen before. I mean, and each year it gets bigger. Each year, um, Pride, everything. You know, the mall, the stores, uh, commercials, Pride, everything, Pride. And even to the children, even to our children, as young as elementary school kids, are now being talked to about sexual situations, same sex situations. Is it okay? We have just a couple weeks ago, or maybe last month, Elmo came out as trans. There was a Sesame Street situation where they showed where Elmo, it was, I think it was like a retelling of Cinderella, and everyone, Cinderella came out and the same story, and no one knew who this woman was. Well, I don't even know if I can say that woman in this situation, and I'll say Muppet, and at the end of the story, Elmo comes out and says, "I am Cinderella, and I was afraid to say something to you guys because I am a boy, but I like to dress up in women's clothes." This was a Sesame Street uh, cartoon. What I want to know is they never talk about people with disabilities. We never see the push we have gotten with LGBTQ. I don't see hardly any amputee kids, uh, people with any type of disabilities. The push that we have gotten with LGBTQ and the amount of time that this has really taken hold in classrooms, I think is faster than the civil rights movement. Right or wrong, but the over sexualization of our children, what is the conversation there? Um, we have drag queen on Nickelodeon. They had a situation where they had a drag queen on Nickelodeon talking to the children. Now, I've gone to drag queen shows. It is a sexualized representation. It's not even like a show like when you go see Diana Ross or Dionne Warwick. This is something where they have hardly any clothes on. They have enough to tuck, but they have bathing suit style clothes, high heels, all this makeup is very sexualized. Why does it have to be brought up to our kids? I don't understand it. I could see if you go to a drag show with your girlfriends Friday night, we have or Sunday they have the drag brunches. But 6 year olds, 9 year olds, what do you guys think? Am I overreacting? I don't know. SpongeBob, and the crazy thing is they're pushing this, but then they they cancel or they censor other stuff. SpongeBob SquarePants, which also airs on Nickelodeon, was forced to stop airing a few episodes a couple months ago that they were noted as controversial because I don't even know if I can say this on Facebook. They might delete this video. I'll say something. I don't know. The episode was titled, I'll spell it for you, KWARATINED. Crab. I'll say it. I mean, hopefully they won't take down this video. Quarantine crab. where they said it was featuring an underwater health inspector at SpongeBob's workplace, the Krusty Krab. That's why they called it with a K, quarantined. Krusty Krab is spelled with a K also if you don't have kids you haven't watched. Owing to an outbreak of clam flu. So the episode, which was supposed to be aired in the US, was shelved after it gained attention for having drawn inspiration from real life incidents. Due to sensitivities surrounding the ongoing real life pandemic. Do you hear this? Do you guys see this? This is crazy. This is crazy. So you are talking to children about, you have drag queens, you're talking to children about same sex, you're pushing this, but we can't talk about quarantine crab on SpongeBob? Come on. What's going on here? Help me. Help me. What is going on here? This is ridiculous. It really is. What I have here in the comments. Ronnie Patterson, remember when they canceled the Dr. Seuss? Right. The Dr. Seuss books in the same week had Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion having sex on primetime TV, right? They were, what do you call it, tribing? Pant rubbing? I remember it. On the Grammys. Christopher Anderson, we are looking at a forced dummy down of society. The over-sexualizing of children is to make an effeminate society that won't speak up in the future in an easily conquered America. You might be right. The other day, it was a commercial on TV where it was like right after one after the other. So it was a Nike commercial. These women, but they were athletes, but it was the sports they were playing were more traditionally masculine sports. So it was like a woman, she was playing football, another woman basketball. I know we have WNBA. They were doing soccer, but they were like really like, what's the word, brawny women. I mean, really cut up. And it was very masculine. I mean, is that still a thing now? Feminine, masculine? And so the next commercial that played was a commercial for kitchenware or something, and it was a guy, I guess he was a dad or something, in the kitchen cooking muffins, baking muffins, and he had an apron on, and he's twitching around the kitchen and stuff, and he's making food for the family. Now, I'm not saying anything's wrong with this, but it's like you're trying too hard. Like, why are you pushing this? I don't know. Am I crazy? I mean, it's I'm from Baltimore, and we have a saying, it's real in the field. It's real in the field right now. As I mentioned, I mean, LGBTQ is pushed more than the people with disabilities. That's a protected class. What about the veterans? Why don't we talk about veterans on these commercials as far as these cartoons pushing, things that go on with the veterans? That's a real thing. Not saying other stuff is not real, but it's like it seems just a little bit more appropriate. I don't know. We have now they're doing the sex reassignment surgery. That's been in the news for children. I'm not talking about adults. If you are an adult, do whatever you want to do. If you want to snip, if you want to tuck, if you want to cut, if you want to bandage yourself till you go concave, I don't care. I'm talking about children. sex reassignment surgery for children. The state of Texas this week declared that performing transgender sex reassignment surgeries on minors constitutes child abuse. Why is this even a question? While on the campaign trail last year, President Biden signaled support for children as young as 8 years old. 8. Think about somebody you know that's 8. They can't even tie their shoes. 8 years old. And boys, some of them still might be wet in the bed. But they're going to tell you that they want to be the opposite sex, that they were born, opposite of their biological gender. Then so children is 8 years old being able to change their genders. Then in a nod to the progressive movement, he nominated Dr. Rachel Levine, who identifies as transgender woman. So for those who don't know the lingo, Dr. Levine was born a man and has transitioned to a woman. So Dr. Levine to be the United States Assistant Secretary for Health. During Levine's confirmation hearing, the health official refused to rule out, again, this is the United States Secretary for Health, okay? She refused to rule out allowing a child to override parental consent in pursuit of hormone therapy or sex change surgery. We might as well just pack up and move. This is what's going on. This is what's going on. What are your thoughts, guys? What are your thoughts on this? Is this okay? Is this okay? Are you okay with it? And if you're not, what are you doing about it? Christopher says, Lil Nas X is a prime example of how they are weakening our man to make a more docile society to control. Yeah. Man, that's just a whole nother issue with him. I don't even want to get into it. But if you don't know who Lil Nas X is, look him up. He is a gay rapper, and he is loud and proud. Okay? He was actually, when he first came out, he had a very large following amongst kids, because he came out with that, was it Old Time Road song that was really catchy. He had all the TikTok kids doing it, and I say kids, I mean like middle school, on up to high school, were singing his songs and looking at his videos. And then he just did they said, he said he's always been out and as gay, but then everything changed and he just started doing really very sexual type of stuff, same-sex stuff. So this is what it is. So moving right along, this is like I said, another issue that our children are dealing with, and I wanted to end on what's going on in Baltimore City. It's crazy. Just over the past couple of months, we had the Baltimore City's graduation rate. Information came out, falling to 69.9% from a high of 72% in 2018. The college enrollment rate is down 13 points. We have Dr. Santalese, who is still leading the charge, folks. We had the Augusta Fells incident where they found out, all these ghost students. So students who were said to have been attending school and marked as being in school actually were not in school. You also had the Fox 45 broke about these children who were failing. Like half the school was failing, had a 1% or lower, I believe. And this school isn't an outlier. This isn't an outlier. This is what's going on in Baltimore City schools. Let me tell you something. If Black people in Baltimore had even I say 1% of the outrage that people in Florida and Texas and the counties are talking about this critical race theory, my God, we'd have an uprising. We would have an uprising. You have children in Baltimore City who are overwhelmingly failing schools. And I know, I won't even say they're failing. Yes, some responsibility falls on them. But when you have year after year after year after year of children failing in your school system, something is wrong at the top. Something is wrong. And if this was going on at a private school or at, I would even say a county school where you had such bad outcomes from children, heads would roll. Heads would roll. We still have this woman and the school board and the CEO are still going on with business as usual. Yeah, I'm not saying anything. You need to be saying something. It's a shame. And you know what? I got to say, it's a goddamn shame. It's a shame. People should be down there at that at North Avenue every day. But we continue to vote in these people. The city council has not done anything. They're not, at least we haven't seen, they're not engaging this woman. They're not, going on news and talking about this, raising awareness and saying something needs to change. Everybody's still getting paid. Everybody. And all they do is provide excuses. Christopher Anderson, a failing school system in Baltimore means non-critical thinkers in the future. Yeah, but let them. It's just, it's awful. It's awful. But this is what our children are dealing with. Like I said, you're dealing with this, with failing outcomes. They're dealing with all this gender issues and that, and also they're dealing with the pandemic. Are schools opening? Are they opening after Labor Day or in August? Baltimore City schools? Will they go back in mass? Is that okay? Maybe you guys don't have a problem with that. Will they be mandated to get vaccines? I would love to know what Christians think about this. And I'd also like to know what the pro-choice movement thinks about mandating. You're mandated to have something put into your body that is not even FDA approved, mandating for this, and then doing it, and then there's a possibility they may mandate it for the children. It's already mandated on college campuses. Ted Tuck, Baltimore City fails at everything, not just in school. Yeah. You live in Baltimore City, Ted? Yeah. And it's sad because the city has so much potential. We have beautiful places in the city. I'm a city resident, proud city resident. We have beautiful, the city is beautiful, food, places to go. That's why we live in the city. You have different cultures, different mixing of people, different socioeconomic statuses. It's a great place to live. I'll say it has a lot of potential. But these politicians and leadership that we have in power in the city are taking it down. Christopher Anderson, Christians have sold out for Democrats, voting against traditional values instead of slide out for Christ. Yeah. I mean, look at the whole critical race theory. We are told to base everything on our skin color. That's not a Christian way. That's not the Christian way. These people are starting to idolize skin color. That is not of God. What matters to God and his son, Jesus Christ, is what's in your heart. That's what matters. Skin color should not matter. Yes, there are racist people in this world. I know that. I've been profiled. I've been a victim of racism. I know this. But I just can't sit here and say, and I won't, and I don't believe that this whole country is based off of racism, and racism runs rampant in everything we do. Exactly. Stop voting for the same party in Baltimore. I totally agree, Ted. I totally agree. Well, guys, we are coming to the end of our time here. I'm actually over. This is supposed to be a 30-minute show. But you know what? I'm pissed off. I am. Because I'm talking about children here. I'm talking about children who are supposed to represent tomorrow. And when I say that, of course, I mean the future. They're supposed to represent hope and just the expectation of good and all the stuff that they have to deal with these days. It's very, very frustrating, and I just pray that we see a change. I hope people are waking up. I do, because I think people fall in one of about four camps. They either agree with all of this stuff that's going on, they're oblivious. There are some people, I know some, oh, that's not true. This isn't happening. Conservative media is hyping all this up. CRT isn't that bad. It's just trying to incorporate Black or African American history within the history. Or there are people that want to see a change and are upset about this. Those are the three camps. You agree with them, you don't believe that it's happening, or you disagree. Which one are you? I disagree. I think we are going down the wrong road as far as the direction we are trying to send our children. The wrong road. And something needs to be done about this. Talking about the dreaded COVID. I don't even want to say it on here. They might not put up a video. Until April 2nd, fewer than 2% of U.S. infections for which age was known were in children under 18, according to the CDC. Recent data show children continue to constitute only a fraction of infections. Fraction. For example, data through July 10th of this year in Florida, which is experiencing an increase, show that fewer than 5% of infections are in children under the age of 15. And we're not talking about death. Children are not a huge passer of this virus, and they certainly are not dying in large amounts. It's almost non-existent. And when you think about it, we have to understand that over this past couple of months, what have we been doing more of that we didn't do last year? Testing. Everybody's getting tested. So of course we're going to have more cases. Dummies. But you have these people that are creating hysteria. And what do you think? What effect is that having on the children? What effect is that having on the children? Especially the young ones. Oh, I'm so happy I don't have like a toddler or a young child, having to put masks on them because you have to put masks. We just went back under mask mandate here in Baltimore City. So 2 and up, you have to wear a mask. What kind of world are they living, or are you living in when you have these little kids having to wear a mask everywhere? And God forbid they don't, because this pandemic has brought out the stone cold nuts. Nuts. To me, I'm like, if you're that stressed about it, stay home. Stay home. If you're that stressed about it, stay home. I support vaccinations. I do. I am not anti-vaccine. I support vaccinations, and I think it's a personal decision. I think that each person should, weigh the risks and weigh the outcomes in your situation. If you have young people in your home, if you have elderly, and do what's right for you and your family. I am against the mandate. Against it. Giovanni Patterson says, my wife was about to get kicked off a plane because my 3-year-old son wouldn't keep his mask on. These people who make these rules have never seen a 3-year-old before. I know. My God, they've never seen yours. I know that boy left that whole plane out. He's an active boy, just like most of these boys are. What do you think this pandemic, these lockdowns did to some of these children? What about children that don't have siblings, and they depend on interaction with their schoolmates, interaction with their sports mates, after school or what have you, and all that was closed for all that time. What does that do to the psyche of these children? And the crazy thing about it is, you can't even talk about it, because if you mention anything that's anti-mask, not even anti, if you question, well, my son, he's been depressed, or my daughter has been having anxiety, about this. You can't even question it, because then they say, oh, you want people to die. No, we're just questioning it, because there are latent effects to the outcomes of these lockdowns. My God, we live in a society where we can't even question anything anymore. It's frustrating. We can't even have dialogue. What's the show? If you support CRT, if you support masking, let's talk about it. But don't have a fit. Don't say I'm a murderer, or I want to see people die. Did you tell Cuomo that? That's who people need to be talking about. They're talking about him. He got caught for the groping and the sexual assault, but they never said anything about what he did to the elderly in New York City, how he caused massive amount of people by taking these COVID patients that were sick and putting them back to the nursing home with the population that was most vulnerable. His program caused a lot of people to die. We haven't heard anything about that on the news. It's a damn shame. Exactly. Ted Tuck says science is about questioning the data. It certainly is. We can't question these days. You cannot question, because if you question something and it goes against what they deem is correct, you are evil. You're a killer. You're a grandma killer. You're a racist. You're homophobe. All these names, that's what you are. The Democrats are not about self-accountability. No, they are not. Because if we held them accountable to the data, if we held them accountable to how they have been run down the cities across America, they have a day of reckoning. But nobody wants to look at the data. What about, I haven't seen one news expose where they have, after we've gone, what, 2 years with COVID-19, now we're going through the Delta variant of it. How did Florida and Texas compare to areas like New York City and California as far as COVID deaths? Because they were open. Schools were open. They were open. There were no mask mandates for long periods of time. It was a huge contrast in how they handled the pandemic and how New York and California handled it. So what does the data say about the outcome of that as far as death? That's what I want to know, because that's what we need to ask. And even the data is not so is not concrete, because half the time, sometimes they were coding these people as COVID deaths, and it wasn't. They were dying from some other cause but because they had COVID, they would put it down as they died of COVID. So these numbers are probably overinflated. Again, I support vaccination. I support vaccination. I think it's a personal issue, a personal decision. If you got vaccinated, good. If you didn't get vaccinated, okay. That's your personal decision. Why should I care if I got vaccinated? Because if I got vaccinated and you didn't, I should be protected, right? All right, guys. We are going to wrap it up at this time. I'm over, but that's okay, because this was important. And we need to talk about our children more and these issues that they are confronting and will confront over this next school year. We have to stay vigilant. We have to stay vigilant. All right, guys. So at this time, we are wrapping it up, or I am wrapping it up. This is another episode of the 8:30 show. Please like, share, and leave a comment on our Facebook or YouTube at Metro Conservative Media. We also on Twitter at Metro Conservative Media, Instagram under the same name, Metro Conservative Media. Please interact with us there, interact with me there. I also have a new Facebook page. So if you haven't seen that, please, I just started it. Would love the support. I'm going to start posting on that page primarily, especially for my political views and things like that. It's just KJ on Facebook. So KJ on Facebook, please check me out. Like the page. I would really appreciate it. Love to connect with you that way. We have other shows here on Metro Conservative Media. Again, this is the 8:30 show. We also do on Wednesdays, we do pop and politics. So it's me and 4 other females, and we just, bring you the latest in news and entertainment from a conservative perspective. So we talk about all kinds of topics on that show. So please check us out there every Wednesday at 8 p.m. And then we also have Great Thoughts Matter. Those shows are found on our YouTube page and Facebook page. That's Metro Conservative Media. Again, I hope to connect with you next Thursday right here at 8:30 p.m. Again, I generally will have a guest, and we will have a guest on next week. So please stay tuned for that information. If you subscribe to our Facebook page, you will be up to date on who's coming on and the shows that are coming out, including content. All right. So again, I thank you so much for joining me tonight. Wishing you warm days and starry nights. Good night.